Welcome to Crime Story with Camila, where we dive deep into the most chilling and mysterious true crime cases. If you love real-life crime stories, make sure to like, subscribe, and share so you never miss an update. Your support helps us bring you the most in-depth investigations and untold stories. December 31st, 2000. While the world prepared to welcome a new year, a quiet home in Tokyo's Setagaya district became the scene of one of Japan's most chilling unsolved murders. A family of 4, brutally slain in their own home, their bodies left in a horrifying state. But the most unsettling part? The killer didn't just vanish. He lingered, eating their food, using their computer, even leaving his clothes behind. This wasn't a rushed crime of passion. It was calculated, cold, and it left behind more questions than answers. Who was the intruder? Why did he stay for hours after the murders? And how, despite DNA, fingerprints, and countless pieces of evidence, has he never been caught? This is the mystery of the Setagaya family murders, a case that has haunted Japan for over 2 decades. Setagaya is a quiet, upper-middle-class district in Tokyo, known for its peaceful suburban life. The Miyazawa family lived in a residential area bordering Setagaya Park, an open space often filled with the laughter of children and the chatter of families. But by the year 2000, the neighborhood was changing. Many homes had been demolished to make way for new developments, leaving the Miyazawa house and a few others isolated. The family consisted of Mikio Miyazawa, 44, his wife Yasuko, 41, and their 2 children, Nina, 8, and Rei, 6. Mikio was a hardworking man, employed at a London-based marketing firm. Yasuko was a dedicated mother who also ran a tutoring business from their home. Their daughter, Nina, was a lively child who enjoyed ice skating, while their son, Rei, struggled with a speech disability, making him even more dependent on his parents. Despite their modest, happy life, there were troubling signs leading up to the murders. The family had complained about disturbances from local skateboarders near the park, and Mikio had even confronted them multiple times. There were also reports of a suspicious person lurking around the neighborhood in the days leading up to the crime. Some even claimed that the family had mentioned feeling uneasy, as if they were being watched. What started as an ordinary December night would soon turn into one of Japan's most horrifying mysteries, one that remains unsolved to this day. The morning of December 31st, 2000, was supposed to be a day of celebration. As families across Japan prepared to welcome the new year, Yasuko Miyazawa's mother, Haruko, grew increasingly uneasy. She had been trying to reach her daughter's family, but none of her calls were being answered. This was unusual. Yasuko always stayed in touch. Concerned, Haruko and her eldest daughter decided to walk over to the Miyazawa house, which was just next door. As they approached, nothing seemed out of place. The lights were still on, and from the outside, everything looked normal. But the moment they stepped inside, they were met with a scene of pure horror. In the first-floor hallway, they found Mikio Miyazawa's body, sprawled on the floor near the staircase. His face was battered, his body covered in stab wounds. The attack had been brutal and relentless. The force of the blows had even fractured his skull. Terrified, Haruko rushed upstairs, hoping to find Yasuko and the children alive. But the nightmare only worsened. In a bedroom, Yasuko and her 8-year-old daughter, Nina, lay lifeless, stabbed multiple times. Blood soaked the walls and sheets. The little girl had defensive wounds, a sign that she had fought for her life. Then came the most devastating discovery: 6-year-old Rei. Unlike the others, he hadn't been stabbed. He was found in his bed, strangled to death, as if the killer had chosen to silence him in a different way. In complete shock, Haruko called the police. Investigators soon arrived, and what they uncovered would baffle Japan for decades. The killer had left behind a shocking amount of evidence, but not a single clear motive. Reconstructing the events of that fateful night, investigators were able to determine that the Miyazawa family was attacked between 11:30 p.m. on December 30th and 12:05 a.m. on December 31st, 2000. However, what makes this case even more chilling is that the killer did not immediately flee the scene. Instead, he lingered for hours. Before the attack, evening of December 30th, 2000, the Miyazawa family spent the evening at home, unwinding like any other normal night. Around 6 p.m., Nina's friend visited the house for a playdate, but left a couple of hours later. At 9:38 p.m., Mikio accessed the family computer. This was the last confirmed sign of activity from him. Around 10 p.m., a neighbor heard loud banging noises coming from the Miyazawa home. They assumed it was just Mikio arguing with skaters in the nearby park, as he had done before. At 11:30 p.m., more disturbing noises were reported. A loud crash and a thud, but no one thought to call the police. The attack between 11:30 p.m. to 12:05 a.m. The intruder likely entered through the second-floor bathroom window, which was left open and had a torn screen. Mikio was the first to be attacked, possibly because he heard the intruder and confronted him. He was stabbed multiple times with a Santoka kitchen knife, which investigators believe the killer brought with him. After killing Mikio, the intruder moved upstairs, where he found Yasuko, Nina, and Rei. Yasuko and Nina fought back desperately, evidenced by their deep defensive wounds. The killer was so aggressive that the knife's blade snapped during the attack. Once the blade broke, the intruder used a backup knife from the Miyazawa's own kitchen to finish the murders. Rei, the youngest, was found strangled in his bed. It is unclear why he was not stabbed like the others. Some believe the killer might have wanted a quieter method for the child. Rather than escaping immediately, the killer stayed in the house for hours. He used the family computer, accessing the internet at 1:18 a.m. and again at 10:05 a.m., long after the murders had taken place. He even attempted to buy theater tickets online. He ate ice cream from the family's fridge and drank tea, showing an unsettling level of comfort. He used the bathroom but didn't flush, leaving behind his waste for investigators to analyze. The killer left his clothing behind, including a hip bag, scarf, and gloves. At some point, he went through the family's documents and belongings, scattering papers around the house. Some were soaked in the bathtub for unknown reasons. Despite rummaging through the house, he did not take valuable items, but he did steal a small amount of money, about 150,000 yen, $300. By morning, he had vanished, leaving behind his DNA, fingerprints, and countless clues. Yet, despite this overwhelming amount of evidence, his identity remains a mystery to this day. The killer left his blood at the crime scene, specifically on the broken Santoka knife he used to kill the family. DNA analysis determined that the suspect was male, of East Asian descent, but with mixed ancestry. His mitochondrial DNA suggested he had a maternal lineage from Southern Europe or the Middle East, which is extremely rare in Japan. His fingerprints were found all over the house, including on the computer, a glass he drank from, and on papers he had touched. The killer discarded much of his outfit inside the Miyazawa home. The following items were left behind: a gray Uniqlo sweater, Japanese brand, sold in limited stores; a black hip bag containing sand from California, leading to speculation that the suspect may have traveled or lived in the US; a scarf, gloves, and a hat, all showing no signs of blood, suggesting he may have changed clothes before leaving; a pair of Slazenger sneakers, size 11.5, only sold in South Korea, leading to theories that he could have been a foreigner or a Korean resident in Japan. The Santoka knife used in the attack was purchased in a Tokyo store, meaning the killer likely bought it beforehand, suggesting premeditation. The blade snapped during the attack, forcing the killer to use a second knife from the Miyazawa's kitchen. The family computer was accessed twice, once at 1:18 a.m. and again at 10:05 a.m. At 10:05 a.m., the killer even attempted to buy theater tickets online. The killer didn't steal valuable electronics or jewelry, but he took 150,000 yen, $300 in cash. The killer's stool was found in the bathroom, allowing investigators to analyze his diet. It was discovered he had eaten string beans and sesame seeds, which may have been consumed before the crime. Despite an overwhelming amount of physical evidence, no arrest has ever been made. The mix of Japanese and foreign DNA, the Korean sneakers, the Californian sand, and the erratic post-murder behavior have left investigators puzzled for over 2 decades. How can someone leave behind so much evidence, yet still vanish without a trace? Based on the overwhelming physical evidence left behind the crime scene, forensic analysts and criminal profilers have pieced together a general profile of the killer. DNA evidence suggests the suspect is male, with a genetic mix that is rare in Japan. His maternal DNA indicates ties to Southern Europe or the Middle East, while his paternal DNA suggests he is of East Asian descent, possibly Japanese, Korean, or Chinese. The size and style of the clothing left behind suggests the killer was a young adult male. His reckless behavior, such as staying at the crime scene for hours, eating, and using the computer, suggests a lack of concern for being caught, possibly due to youth or inexperience. The brutal overkill on Mikio Miyazawa, including fractured skull injuries, suggests the killer had considerable strength. He managed to climb into the house through the second-floor bathroom window, indicating agility. The killer wore Slazenger sneakers, size 11.5, which were only sold in South Korea at the time. The sand found in his hip bag matched a type found in Southern California, raising the possibility that he had traveled to or lived in the US. Most killers flee immediately, but this suspect remained in the house for hours, eating food, using the computer, and even leaving behind waste in the bathroom. This suggests he was either extremely confident or mentally unstable. He might have had an emotional detachment from his actions, possibly due to psychopathy or a severe disorder. His lack of an escape plan hints at impulsive tendencies. The type of clothes he wore, including a Uniqlo sweater and the brand of sneakers, were popular among skateboarders in Japan and South Korea at the time. The Miyazawa family had ongoing disputes with noisy skateboarders near the park, leading some to believe the suspect could have been connected to that group. Despite having an almost complete forensic profile, including DNA, fingerprints, and physical descriptions, the killer has never been identified. Was he a foreigner who left Japan soon after? A disturbed youth with no prior record? Or someone protected by influential connections? The investigation into the Setagaya family murders was one of the most extensive in Japan's history. With over 246,000 investigators assigned to the case over the years, police collected a staggering amount of evidence, yet they were never able to identify the killer. Authorities scoured CCTV footage, but no clear suspect was caught on camera. The forensic evidence, including DNA, fingerprints, and the suspect's belongings, was analyzed, but no match was ever found in police databases. Investigators reached out to Interpol and South Korean authorities, given the suspect's possible international ties, but this yielded no results. Police considered several theories, including a robbery gone wrong, a personal grudge, or even a random thrill kill, but none fully explained the killer's actions. Japanese authorities released composite sketches and detailed descriptions of the suspect's clothing in hopes of generating leads. Over 16,000 tips were received from the public, but none led to a breakthrough. Crime TV shows, news specials, and annual police reminders kept the case in the public eye, but as the years passed, new leads became scarce. Despite Japan's high clearance rate for homicides, this case remains one of the country's most infamous unsolved murders. Authorities continue to accept tips, hoping that new DNA technology or a confession might one day bring justice for the Miyazawa family. The Setagaya family murders remain one of Japan's most haunting unsolved crimes, leaving a deep scar on the community. The brutal nature of the killings and the sheer amount of evidence left behind have baffled law enforcement for over 2 decades. The Miyazawa family's former home was left untouched for years as a reminder of the tragedy, but it was eventually demolished. However, the case remains open, and police continue to revisit the evidence, hoping that advancements in DNA technology or new forensic techniques might finally lead to a suspect. Every year, on the anniversary of the crime, Japanese authorities renew their public appeal, urging anyone with information to come forward. Despite the passage of time, the hope for justice remains alive. The Setagaya family murders stand as one of the most mystifying and chilling unsolved crimes in Japan's history. Despite an overwhelming amount of physical evidence, including DNA, fingerprints, clothing, and even the killer's personal items, no one has ever been identified or arrested. For over 2 decades, the gruesome murder of the Miyazawa family has left investigators and the public grappling with unanswered questions. Who was the killer? Why did he linger in the house for hours after committing such a brutal act? And how did he simply disappear without a trace, despite leaving behind so much evidence? The case remains a painful reminder of how even the most advanced forensic science can fail when a suspect remains just outside the grasp of identification. Until new leads emerge or breakthroughs in forensic technology provide answers, the Setagaya family murders will remain a terrifying enigma, one that continues to haunt Japan to this day.
Thanks for watching. For more interesting videos, please subscribe.